Good morning to all the participants. We will start by 11:05 as we all been always doing for all the previous days. So another 3 to 4 minutes we will start.
Have a pleasant day in Mumbai today. They are from all over India, no? So we cannot talk about it. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, good morning.
So good morning to all the participants. Good morning, Rajesh Srivastava sir, Rajeshri madam, and good morning, Hiren sir, one of the most important person who has done all the technical, whatever need technical requirements that met by Dr. Hiren.
Thank you.
So welcome to the last day, sixth day, session 1 of the capacity building program. And as formally, Rajeshri madam is going to read out the resume of profile of Dr. Rajesh Srivastava, you will know what kind of experience he has, global level experience he has, and I'm sure that such a personality will also have, will deliver an very enlightening, enriching, and a memorable session. I have read his profile, I have also met him, and from that I can conclude that whatever lessons, whatever new information we are going to gain today will be very, very useful in any kind of research writing, be it research papers, be it a minor major research project which you have applied for, or be it your research thesis, your dissertation, MPhil project, whatever. In all the ways, in all these writings, sir will explain how the entire format will be considered, format should be applied, and what should be the contents related to any kind of research writings. Academic writings, as I always say, academic writings are very typical and peculiar. You cannot have the same kind of words when you are writing as the way you are talking, or as the way you are writing any article in a newspaper or any other magazines. So academic writing has a special importance. So that kind of training today Rajesh sir will give you through his session. And as usual, for the formal introduction, my colleague Dr. Rajeshri Deshpande will take over. Rajeshri ma'am, over to
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, thank you. Good morning to everyone. I'm really overwhelmed to introduce such a great, eminent person with more than 30 years experience of industry, working with various companies. He is a professor and head of the marketing department, Government of Maharashtra Sidnam Institute of Management Studies, Research and Entrepreneurship Education since 2012. He has organized 12 international conferences. He has been rated by DNA newspaper as innovative professor in 2013. He has been declared as one of the top 100 dedicated professors at World Education Congress 2018. He has published more than 201 research articles in international and national referred journals. He has also chaired sessions at international conferences in Canada, Malaysia, Korea, US, and India, and won Best Paper Presentation from 2010 to 2018. In 2019, he also got a Best Paper Presentation Award in a 6th Asia Pacific Award AMS USA organization. He has written 8 different books in production management and negotiation, international business, culture, manufacturing and retail case study, and so on. SNDT Women University, DY Patil University, MGM Health Science University as a research guide in the area of marketing since 2005. And 30 students have been awarded PhD under his able guidance. He has been invited for lectures in US, Canada, Denmark, South Africa, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and he is doing it from since 2005. Welcome to 6th day of ICSSR WRC and Department of Commerce, University of Mumbai, 1 week capacity building program on basics of research methodology. A warm welcome to sir.
Madam
Thank
Smita
you.
madam
Thank
is
you very
also
much.
joined.
Now
Rajesh sir,
over to
Smita
you,
madam
sir.
has joined. So Smita madam, please unmute yourself and you speak few words.
Good morning, Dr. Kinnari
Good morning, ma'am.
and Dr. Rajesh Srivastava.
Thank you.
Sir, already his bio brief has been read out. So I believe all participants will be able to get a feel that how experienced he is as a faculty as well as a researcher. And I'm sure that his session will be very fruitful as well as of lot of value addition to all the participants. Thank you, Dr. Kinnari.
Thank you, ma'am. Over to
Thank
you,
you, ma'am.
Rajesh sir. You can start with your session. There's a confusion, Rajesh and Rajeshri, like.
So can I start?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
A very warm welcome to all of you and good morning. And I'd like to thank ICSSR for inviting me for this lecture. It is my honor to be here and share my experience with you. I'll be starting from being a marketing person, I always take a smaller topic first and then go to the moderate topic and go to the difficult topic later. So I'll start with the abstract. And it is a very important, the chapter any reviewer will look at, whether it is a thesis or whether it's a research paper. So what I'm going to present is my experience of writing papers in different types of journals, which I'll give you the example so that it is more practical example than just a theory part. So so the abstract basically should create an interest in the mind of the reviewer or the reader. This is very, very important. Therefore, the title should be very important because, the more the attractive title you have, the greater will be the interest. I just share my experience with one of the papers which got published in 2019. This is basically, the whole idea came in from the Maggie and the Maggie crisis. And that Maggie crisis, motivated me to write a research paper, which got published in 2 different journals with different content. The topic was, actually the original topic was rebuilding a brand from crisis management to recapturing the image. Case of Nestle's Maggie. This was the original topic. By the time, it went to the reviewer stage platform and then the reviewers made a comment, then the topic started changing. From the topic which started with rebuilding came to rebuilding a brand from crisis management to recapturing the image. And, the Maggie name was there. And then finally, the topic which emerged after a lot of comments from the reviewer from 2-3 journals, the rebuilding a global brand. See, from a brand, when you are writing a global brand in an international journal, they like to publish a data which is globally acceptable to all. This is what I learned from this, the discussion on topic, how to write a topic. The moment I wrote a global brand topic, this whole paper got a very favorable response from international journals. So that is one lesson I learned, that if you are writing for a good journal, it should appeal to many audience across the globe, not only local. So this is the another point. Then, basically the abstract is the opportunity. This is what I learned, is to attract the reader's attention, developing your title. Remember, the readers are potential authors and will cite your article too. So therefore, keeping your title is also very interesting. Keep it informative and concise. Reviewer will check whether the title is specific and whether it reflects the content of the manuscript. Many times we write an abstract which doesn't match with the content. I'm just sharing my own experience as a reviewer in very few limited journal where I am in the reviewers board. They're all listed A or B class journals. So the abstract should be basically represent the content of your paper. If it doesn't represent the content of the paper, the abstract loses the interest, and the reviewer also will lose the interest in reviewing your paper, and the paper gets rejected. The editor hates titles that make no sense or fail to represent the subject matter adequately. It is very, very important. Another point which I learned from my own experience is that avoid jargons. instead of writing short form, you write full form. Say, for example, CSR. CSR is a buzzword. So everybody understands what CSR is. But the moment you mention the impact of CSR on brand recall, it doesn't make sense, because then you have to say that impact of corporate social responsibility on the brand recall or on the corporate equity. If that is the headline we give, that is more acceptable in an international journal. Again, like to mention, this is based on my limited experience, which I have, tried during the last few years. Now, the abstract will also depend upon the type of journal you're writing or type of publisher. For example, Emerald has its own style of abstract, which we'll discuss as we progress. Or Elsevier in the science, they have its own style of, abstract writing. Or Springer or Francis Taylor or Willis, they have a different types of styles of writing. So you have to understand first what style of abstract should be written for a particular journal. This is very, very important. Many times we write an abstract which doesn't go as per the style of the journal, so the paper gets rejected. So the abstract is first barometer. The abstract size, the words should be also be specific. Some say is 150, some say is 125. It goes up to 250. It varies from the type of journals when you are writing. And so therefore the question comes in that in 150 words, what should I write? This is a dilemma coming from the industry to the academics I had always faced, that what should I write? Because we are used to writing long and short both. But when you're writing the abstract, it should contain in 150 words. So it should summarize what is your work. Nothing great I'm talking about. But it is ideal. This is what I'm talking about, my experience. Ideal to start with the purpose or aim in 2 sentences. So that should be enough. Then follow up with methodology part, where 2 or 3 sentences based on the word format of the journal you can write. And then next should be findings, where you can have 3 to 4 sentences on findings. You can mention that point. Excuse me. And the contribution should be 1 or 2 sentences, which is very, very important, because they are always looking for, if you have done a research, what is so great about your research? So you have to basically, being a marketing and research person, you have to sell your paper, and you have to write in such a manner that it shows that the paper is really excellent and very attractive. So the minimum word, then the last point is the key words. The minimum should be 3 to 5. And one thing which I learned of late, earlier it was not there till 2017 or so. Of late, I observed that people are insisting that every word should have a semicolon, not comma. So this is the new style which I also learned of late, and I started implementing it, because we have to go by the journal's guideline if you want to get our paper published. I hope I am very clear. Yes, hello? I'll just give you the example of the optimizing the advertising effectiveness. For an example, there's a paper which is coming in the International Journal of Research and Data Analytics, India Science Group under print. Basically, this paper I started writing in 2008, and 2006 I gave a new concept called the UCP concept, unique customer perception. If you go to Google and type unique customer perception, you may get my name against this concept. Now, the bridge positioning basically is an approach which bridges the gap between what we are communicating and what you are perceiving. So what companies are advertising, it should talk the language which a customer can understand. Very, very important. And in this process, many times the 50% of the advertisement goes waste, which everybody is aware. Now, the bridge positioning approach will help in bridging this gap and minimizing the wastage. If you see the abstract, which is under print in this journal, the first two lines, if you see, one first line is the purpose. The second line, if you see, is the the exploratory methodology part. The third part is the findings, and the fourth part I have written the concept of two theories, which are able to explain the behavior of the consumer. This is very, very important in abstract. A very brief abstract, but at the same time, one or two lines you can add as a, the contribution of your theory to the findings is very, very important. Because when you write only findings, it is only you are only describing the what has happened. But why it has happened is very, very important in any research. Because what is happening is not a research. That's what many people say abroad, that you should explain if it is happening, why it is happening. That's very, very important. And that should be reflected in any research paper or thesis or in an abstract, which currently I'm discussing. And then, the research finding then the contribution, the last line is contribution. And one more point I have added is the practitioner paper, because, basically it's a conceptual paper, but when you write practitioner paper, it gets a lenient view, from the reviewer, because the practitioner may not be full-fledged academicians. And so any plus minus 10% is, given for this purpose. So that is what it was mentioned in the abstract form. Another example I have taken is the same from the IndeScience. I'm giving you group wise how the group wise the abstracts are written. For an example, will direct comparative advertisement works for a leading brand? So this has already appeared in 2020. I would say volume 3 recent publications. Again, if you see, the style is more or less same. And the first is the purpose, followed by the the objective, I mean say the methodology part, and then results, and then contribution. And again, if you see here, keeping the trend, as I was mentioning to you earlier, the keeping the trend from 2018 onwards, you have to mention the theory, how you can apply the theory to your result to explain the behavior. So I have added ELM approach to explain the behavior of the people. And it has already come. You can go to the Google and get this reprint of the paper. And if you see the keywords, each keywords has a semicolon. Earlier, I sent a paper with column with a comma, but later on, the desk research person said that your abstract is not as per the format. So I have to redo the thing and send it again. Now, having discussed two publishers' journal that is from Elsevier, let me share my own experience with the Francis Taylor publications. This, is taken from the International Journal of Healthcare Management. And this is regarding the OTC product, which we got it published along with one of my PhD students who got PhD already. This is basically on how, the consumer purchase behavior will be towards the product which are advertised in pharmaceutical industry. So they are called OTC products. And if you see here, what we have mentioned, the first is the objective, again, the aim. The second paragraph is again the methodology, but this is my style, so that, and this is, conveys I find it easier to get the paper accepted if you write this like this. Then, the findings, which we have mentioned, and then again, we have mentioned the theory of planned behavior by Eisen, and theory of reason action, again by Eisen and Fishman. has been developed to predict the consumer behavior using this factor analysis. So this is how the, the abstract for the Francis Taylor were written. But I don't know whether you have noticed here the key word in the journal is all caps. Normally, we write keywords K capital and the rest will be small letters. But here the keywords are written in caps. So you have to be very careful the style. You have to follow the style, and then you have to adopt and then submit so that the acceptance rate will go up. Coming back to the another example from Francis Taylor, this is Journal of Promotion Management, which is again highly rated journal. Brand placement in movie song and its impact on brand equity. Again, if you see the example which I have given is the same thing, which it says that what is the aim of the purpose, then comes methodology part, then comes brand name, that is called the findings. And here, if you see, the theory is not written here because that is the, more like a practitioner paper. So they accepted it, and it in the body itself, if you see it in the research paper, we have mentioned, but here we have not mentioned. This is thought I'll just share my. So I have discussed two journals, two publishers. One is earlier was now is Francis Taylor. Earlier was In the Science or Elsevier. Now let me share the Emerald publications, and I find that Emerald is the style of abstract gives you very clear understanding of your thought process. So, for an example, I wrote one paper called "Rebuilding a Brand Under Crisis," case of a global brand which we discussed earlier. Excuse me. And this came in the International Journal of Pharmaceutical Healthcare Marketing in 2019. You see the style here. This is the topic. Topic is little bigger, right? The purpose, it is very well defined. The purpose is 200 words, but at the end of the abstract, they say that should be 250 words, but purpose is well defined. Then design, methodology, approach. This is as per the format. Findings, and then research implications. And here, you have to write in detail how your data will be useful for a manager, or for limitations and implications. And then the practical implications basically for a manager, how the manager can use your data. That is very, very important. So there is a way it is written in the Emerald publications. Then one more thing which I learned in Emerald is the originality and value. So what is so great about your research paper? So you have to, talk about, you have to, drumbeat about your research paper in the originality, because all the reviewer will say, so what is so what? So what is so great about your research which you're doing? So you have to talk about originality. If you see the earlier abstract, we have mentioned one or two lines. Application of theories was done for the first time. Findings, we have done something different. So all these points, please remember that the abstract writing is very, very crucial to attract the attention of during the first desk review. Normally, when you send a paper, it is reviewed by the the editorial assistant or assistant editor or the editor. They review a paper whether it is worthwhile to send to others, because all reviewers are not getting paid for reviewing the paper. It is all unpaid job. So they don't like to waste the time by sending the paper which is not up to the standard. That is the reason why many journals, the desk reject is very, very high. So it would be very, very careful. Then, another example of same emerald, since we have taken two each. So I thought, let me share the two each experience. The other one is the same from the emerald. This is the way if you see here, this is related to, the finance management stock market, purpose, design, finding, research implications, and then originality. And then this is what, you can abstract about the summary, what I learned. Abstract should be brief, not assume too much, and highlight the items of importance. Very, very important. There should not be comparison that my this research paper is the only paper. They immediately reject it. I also learned the hard way. The 4 sentences should be aim of the study, how you did it, see what your solution achieves, and why it is unique. Very, very important. And always follow the style and what you are writing, whether it is a Harvard style or whether API style. And normally the abstract are written last, which you also, I'm sure all of you must be doing the same. Now, why the keyword is important? Why the keyword is important is because the keyword, I'll just give you my own example where my paper got, rejected, is based because of the keywords. They say that, of course, there are many other points, but one of the points which they mentioned was that your topic is something and your keyword is something else. It doesn't represent all the keywords, all the words related to your article title is not mentioned in the keywords. And it has come from International Journal of Food Marketing, again from Francis Taylor Publications. I value these journals. I published earlier in the journals. So, it is good to know, where you are making mistakes. Sometimes we are in a hurry, we make mistakes, but at the same time, we have to be very, very careful, especially while writing the abstract part. And this is what I learned from the New Orleans. I attended a American Marketing Science Conference in New Orleans, USA in 2019. And the journal, what I learned, because there were a host of editors of reputed, like Journal of Marketing, American Marketing Science, American Management Science. Many reputed editors were there in that conclave. And there was a panel discussion. And what I learned, I thought, let me share with you. It was man is always learning, and you cannot say that you have learned enough. So journal style to be strictly followed. This is what I learned. You cannot just write and then try to see whether it is acceptable, then later on change it. No. Excuse me. The first 3 pages should create an interest and state state the issues and problems early. Abstract is basically like a mini skirt in a lighter tone. Keep it interesting in brief summary. Very, very important. And the number of words matters for any abstract. So, as far as abstract writing is concerned, what I learned, I thought, let me summarize. Follow the journal style of writing as per the author's guideline. Number of words vary from journal to journal, so you have to follow that. Summary should be interesting and should incorporate applications and newness. And of course, new words should cover all important variables based on your study. And the keywords should have, after each variable, there should be a not comma, but semicolon. This is the first part of the topic. If you have a questions, we can ask. Otherwise, I can go to the next. Yes, ma'am. No question asked. Then let me go to the next one. The next part of my lecture is, as nobody has covered the introduction part, I thought, let me share how to write an introduction. Because once we have written an abstract, little interest I have created in the mind of the editor or the assistant editor or the reviewer or the reader. The introduction plays a very, very important role. And this is what I learned, that in the introduction is the key factor which will create an interest. So let me share my own experience of how to write an introduction, which is very easy. People say so. Even I also felt the same, that introduction mein kya hai, is you can write, but it doesn't make sense. When you say that introduction mein kya hai, you have to write the real content in the introduction. For an example, in any thesis when you write, or any research paper when you write, the format remain more or less same. It may vary depending upon the university as far as thesis is concerned, but in a research paper, the format remains same across the globe. So little bit here, minor changes can happen, but any research paper format or thesis format, the introduction is the key factor, followed by first is the abstract, the executive summary, or whatever you say. Then come the literature research, which is very, very important. Introduction gives you, creates an interest in the reader's mind that, yes, it is very interesting. It also guides you to research problems and issues in the introduction phase. What are the problems and issues? What are the questions you will be writing under the introduction chapter, which will create interest? And a brief, you can write application of theories to understand the problem. A brief, not detail, because detail you'll be writing subsequently. So a brief writing on the introduction. But when you're writing about thesis, you have to have at least minimum 5 to 10 pages on theory which you're using it. Because that will give you a value to the thesis, and your viva should not exceed more than 5 to 10 minutes. Normally, the student's viva, I strongly feel, should not exceed more than 10 minutes. If your content is excellent, and if you have a good publication background before you submit a thesis, viva should be over within 10 minutes. Because the reviewer has will not ask any much question, because you've done enough work, and you know the subject better than the reviewer himself. So this is what I strongly believe. And similarly, when you're writing a research paper, the introduction is basically, showing a glimpse at how important is your paper. The literature review is the second part of the, whether it is a thesis writing or in the paper. But here, what I learned, I've been writing research paper since 2006-5 onwards. The literature research, I feel, you should give at the end of each research a table, which gives you really your understanding. For an example, author, year, journal, countries, and the area studied, variable. And then you say the gap analysis. So what happens, when you are talking about the gap analysis, it gives you an idea that which area you're going to study. And in a tabular form, when you give, it makes sense. Instead of looking for, where is the gap, the person has tried to find out. And in the text itself, any gaps when you're writing, say if you're reviewing any 2-3 papers, you should review the paper and then tell what are the lacunas and how these lacunas you are trying to build into your research. Very, very important. And that is what the beauty of the research literature review comes in. And then, sorry, the gap analysis and the conceptual framework. So once I know what are the variables, then I can talk about the conceptual framework, because conceptual framework and hypothesis are linked. And here, you have to bring in the concept of theory. And the theory, how you can explain the linkage of the variables, and then through the theory, and then develop your hypothesis. The problems and issues will come there itself in that while writing the conceptual framework. And then in the objective are normally written in the thesis, but not written in the research paper. I'm talking about based on my experience. I may be wrong, but whatever paper I published in internationally, about more than 150 or 160 out of that, out of 210. So, the objective and problems are never written in a research paper. It is always comes in the introduction phase. But in the thesis, the objective has to be written before hypothesis. One of the major problems I observed while reading the thesis of different universities is that objective and hypothesis, they no linkage. For an example, if you've taken 6 objective, you have taken 8 hypotheses. From where you got 8 hypotheses? Or if you've taken 6 objective, you have taken 4 hypotheses. So there is no linkage. This is a very common problem, which I also learned coming from the industry. When my students used to submit the thesis, and during the Viva, I had one friend. His specialization was this: first, see whether problem and hypothesis are linked together or not. I also learned. So the problems and objective and hypothesis should be linked together, and the problems and objective has to be linked. See, all three are synchronized. This is very, very important. And then comes the research methodology, research design, sampling, questionnaire design, management control system. Now, research design is basically you have to write as much as you possible as far as research paper is concerned. Don't hide anything. This is what I learned. Even minute detail you should write. Why? Because if somebody wants to replicate your research in their country, he should understand how you have done it. If you're hiding it, the paper gets screwed. So another point is the sampling. Justification of sampling is very, very important. You have to be very, very careful how you chose the sample respondents. And you have to justify the sample size, And then comes the questionnaire design. In questionnaire design, unless you give Cronbach alpha value, your paper has got no value, sir. Very, very important point, sir. Cronbach alpha value has to be mentioned. And each variable Cronbach alpha value, if you can give, that will improve your quality of the paper. Many times we don't write Cronbach alpha value. The reliability test for the questionnaire is important. And that should be mentioned. And in fact, excuse me, what I learned is that there are some specialized reviewers who don't see the content, but they see the methodology and give comments why your paper should not be selected. These are the areas where you should correct. And this is what I learned from when I was in New Orleans, USA. These editors, I happened to meet them, and they say that people, I don't know why people don't write how they have done the research. Why they're in a hurry to only talk about results? They should also talk about the methodology part, so that if I want to replicate your research, I should be able to do it if it is very, very clear. So this is what I learned, that the methodology should be at least 10 pages in thesis. 10 pages minimum, 10 pages should be there. That's what I always tell my students, that you have to write 10 to 15 pages of methodology part. Research design, sampling, questionnaire design, management control, means how you have control, because in thesis, Normally, the web survey or Google form survey is not acceptable in a good university. Maybe you may say that how it depends upon the university, but in an international journal, if you write that all the Google form, the questionnaire were collected through Google form, it may not be acceptable. Maybe that in Corona's time, crisis management, they may agree, but they may not agree totality if you go to A-grade journals. And then comes, the results and discussion. Nothing great I'm talking to. I'm just trying to give you my viewpoint, which may be repetitive for most of you. Results and discussion. Here, in terms of discussion, you should always bring the theory. Result could be a descriptive or hypothesis testing. Please divide the research thesis or research paper into two parts. One is divide into one descriptive research, when you describe what is happening. So what? Right? Then we go to the hypothesis testing. So what? Then we go to the discussion part. And then we explain that the data which we have got, how the behavior is taking place. For an example, recently, we wrote a paper on consumer purchase behavior during Corona crisis. Recently, I have just completed and sent the paper abroad. Now, we got the data that online purchase has gone up. So what? Why? Why people are doing online purchase? Why people are buying more medicines? Why people are buying masks? Why? Reason is you have to bring in the theory concept, because this abnormal behavior which is not noticed during the normal time can be explained through the usage of theory of fear theory, right? And it was propounded in 2001 by one author. And that if you can include that theory of fear to explain the behavior pattern and how that theory of fear develops external pressure and internal pressure. That is your contribution in this research paper. I hope it will get published. At least it's not got desk reject this one. It has gone for review. So I was happy that the first hurdle it has passed. So the consumer purchase behavior will definitely vary. And here in the result part and the discussion part, this is very, very important that we have to mention that in the discussion, the implication and the application of theories to explain the behavior of the consumer. This is very, very important. And then comes the conclusion. Conclusion is not a summary of the results. The conclusion is basically what you feel it is right, what you conclude. And in this, if you can add the application of theory also to explain the behavior, that makes sense. And then comes limitations and the managerial implications. And then one more thing which I learned coming from the industry to academics, they have got strict format. Tables should be numerical and the figure should be in Roman. So you have to follow that style. I'm sure. I'm sharing my own experience of 30 PhD students who got PhD already, because they make a mistake. They write table 1, then even figure, table 1, table in Roman. I mean, say in numerical, but they don't write in Roman. So you have to write in a typical way. Now let's go to the introduction part, which is very, very important. After, I have shown the small glimpses of my research paper through my abstract, the reader's interest has gone up, the reviewer's interest has gone up. So they like to go to the introduction phase, which is, like opening a door for the visitors. He has come to your house, so you are showing your own house by opening the door. And the introduction is something like that. So introduction is basically, gives you the background context, previous research, and key references, what people have done. And what is your contribution to the program? This is what they are looking for. So let's see the next part, how to write a international journal introduction chapter. This is the beginning of my chapter now. The writing an introduction. So you have to answer following. What I am studying. You have to write, no? Because reviews is also trying to find out what you are writing. Are you writing garbage or you are writing something very specific? What is the important question? Why should a reader read your introduction part? Why? What do we know already about it? For an example, if I am writing a paper on impact of music and fragrance on the consumer purchase behavior, there will be more than 100 papers on the same. So what is so great about your paper? This paper is under working paper for me. It is already sent for review. It is under review stage, fortunately, in the International Journal of Retail and Consumer Behavior, yes, Francis Taylor publications. Now, the point is that you have to highlight what you are doing something new in that. So I have written one thing, excuse me, that the impact of music with fragrance or without fragrance on the consumer behavior, purchase behavior. Very, very important. Now, how, that has created a different interest. And I have to highlight this point that most of the research has been done in a Western culture context, but not in the Eastern culture context. Now, the point is that a researcher may argue that my Western culture contest may be applied to the Eastern culture contest too. But then you have to justify why it cannot be applied. So a big paragraph was written related to the same. And then only, the people started showing interest, because you cannot just make a blanket statement that the research data which is applied in Western cultural context cannot be applied in Eastern culture context. Who said that? You have to justify that why it is important. How the study will add to the existing knowledge too is very, very important. And are we using any theory? If yes, a brief information at this stage, if you can give, that is always better. This is what the many editors of top rated A-grade journals have told during their conference, that is better to. Now let me give you an example. This is again, the comparative advertisement building by a leading brand and a challenging brand. I'm just sharing my experience. So this is the abstract which was written. And if you see why I have taken up this type of, the comparative advertisement, I said that in abroad, the comparative advertisement is very, very common. No doubt about it. Say, for example, in 1997, Grewal, a well-known researcher, has done research like this. So what is so great about we are doing now here? So I have to say that the court judgment in 2014, they allowed that comparative advertisement can be done in after 2014. It was done in August. So you have to mention that because of that, the interest in the Indian emerging markets like India has gone up to follow that approach. And how the comparative advertisement will be acceptable in Eastern culture concept is a debatable question, is a question mark. And that's how this research paper is for. And then, it says, what are the theories you're using? For example, if you see the red part, the theory of ELM, the elaborative link theory has been used. How, the people behave when, it is compared. Or for an example, the present study will be useful in the context of South Asia region, where, the Hinduism and Muslim followership are more, and emerging markets are the destination for global brand. Because I'm trying to, propagate my research globally, so I have to justify that why this research is useful to every reader of the journal. This is very, very important, sir. Now, having discussed how to write for international journal with example, now I like to give some tips which I learned hard way. Give sufficient, the background data to make the reader understand, followed by research statistics. Normally people give data, but they don't give source. See, for an example, the honey market is so many millions, always write in millions. But what is the source? You have to write the source immediately. Any figure which is written, I'm talking about any, whether it is a thesis or whether it is a research paper, wherever data is written, you have to give source. People don't write source immediately. You have to write immediately in bracket source. This one, our Times of India report, business standard, 2020. So you have to give source and review what is known about research topic as far as possible, relevant to the thesis or paper. Don't unnecessarily write research paper which is not relevant to your topic at all. Many people write stories about the research done by, but not related to the topic, which is very, very important. And then the statement of goal of the study should be mentioned in the introductory phase, as I was mentioning to you earlier. And how the present study will add knowledge is also, important. And cite references whenever you feel it is required. Cite all work should be directly related to the goal of the thesis. There is a summary, good enough references, which reader could, by going to the library, can get the data. And the question comes in here, when you are, how many references you should give from the books? In thesis, yes. But in a research paper, in an A-grade journal, I was, little surprised when I quoted a Philip Kotler's, reference, book reference. The reviewer has said that your main problems which you have taken for the study is basically the main research data which you have taken for study is from the book, which is not right for any A-grade refereed journal. This is what I learned 10 days back. I thought, let me share this with you. And in thesis, or whether it is, research paper, never write references which is 20 years old. Always start 10 years old, 10 years back, unless there is a theory. Unless, somebody propounded theory in 1985, so you can't help it. But never give outdated references in your research paper or in your thesis. If you are starting the PhD writing in 2020, take 10 years back data only, because you will take another 2 to 3 years, 3 years to write, to submit the thesis as per my standard. So that means at least 10 years back data you should take, not beyond that. Otherwise, your data become outdated. Very, very important. This is what I understand. And again, like to mention, you may differ. This is again based on my experience, which I thought let me share with you. And introduction is not a place to summarize everything we have read about. Very, very important. And they explain the scope of your work, and which will be not be included while going to the next question, next part of literature review. It's better to write. And this is what I learned of late, that the last paragraph, we should contain the linkage, linking the sentence, that is called linkage sentence, from the introduction to the literature review. Earlier, I never used to do that. But of late, I realized that if I have to graduate from, publishing from B grade to A grade journal, or A grade to A plus journal, I have to follow certain norms which are expected from the reviewer. Let me give examples. Again, This is taken from the bridge positioning, which is under print. So these are the few earlier topic which we have written on the same topic, which earlier it was written and modified. And then if you see here the introduction part, I have written this is bridge positioning is very, very important for a better brand recall and purchase intentions. So here what I'm trying to say, importance of the research. Why my bridge positioning research is important. Very, very important, sir. And then you see the next paragraph, it says that there are numerous times, there's a clutter of advertisements. So many advertisements are bombarded and people don't bother. They don't recall. So that is why we have to minimize the wastage of the expenditure on advertising. If you want to minimize the wastage of advertising expenditure, and they're just saying that 50, we don't know which 50% goes best. If you want to optimize the same, the bridge positioning is an important tool. Now, then then comes the last paragraph of the introduction. That deals with the aim of the study, aim of the current work, and this is how the aim of the current work is mentioned. And then, if you see here, the research questions is mentioned. The research question is mentioned that whether the bridge positioning incorporating the USP and UCP can help to develop a better brand recall. Research question, and that we have to follow up with the literature review, then follow up with the hypothesis, and then follow up with the testing of the hypothesis, and then develop a model and link with the theory. And that's how this paper was written. And basically, the first paper was written in 2006, which came in Academy of Marketing Science in 2006. And in 2005, I propounded a new concept called unique customer perception. If you go to Google, write unique customer perception, you may get my name there, because I was the one who propounded the unique customer perception. Not drumbeating about it, but if you do a good job, you should talk about it. Some more information on the introduction part, let me share. The tip number 2, have you done something new and interesting? This is the question which I always check myself. This is the self-introspection. Is there anything challenging in your work? What is so great about your work? This is what I was during the Corona time, the research paper which I wrote. I was asking, everybody knows they are online in Corona crisis, online purchase will go up. So what is so great about it? Why people, so you have to find out something interesting in the Corona crisis, what they are buying, why they are buying, what is their behavior, what is the mental equilibrium, are they depressed, are they anxious? A lot of things came out, and that's what we translated these findings into through the application of theory, and then developed a new theory to explain the behavior of the consumer. Have you provided solution? And then, of course, whatever data you are writing, you check with Google Request App Score, because many times the work done is already done. For an example, I was very excited in 2012 when we wrote a research on role of music, and I was so happy that in the conference it was presented. It was covered by Times of India, Yogita Rao. It was covered in Hindustan Times. It was covered in different newspapers as a headline. I was surprised that why it is so much interest is being created by this one. So I thought, okay, conference to ho gaya, let us write a research paper. So when I started writing a research paper, I was surprised that I'm not new. Hundreds of people have already done the research in this area. So you have to first also check when you are doing a literature review, try to find out what is so great about your research and is it something new. Let me give you some more examples after discussing the five points which we covered under introduction. The examples. These are the few examples which I thought, which is just taken from Journal of Strategic Marketing, which is the A-grade journal as per ABDC journalist as well as other list of journals. It is, it is has already come this month in June 2020. It is basically they have compared three types approaches of advertising in brand building in emerging markets. So, if you see the introduction part, the first part, we are talking about that, there's a lot of traffic, a lot of, the advertisement are bombarded. And then because a lot of advertisement bombarded, then, there is hardly any attention, people are getting time to pay. So the importance of this research becomes very, very important. And then, you justify in the second paragraph why, the studying the different types of approaches in advertising is very important. Because I may use emotional approach, I may use, fear approach, I may use humorous approach, but how it makes sense to a consumer like us, or how it makes sense in a Asian countries where the Eastern culture is more predominant compared to the Western countries where the individualistic culture is important, compared to collective cultures in the world. So we have to consider these factors. That's how it is mentioned. Then we have taken three in the introduction part. Then we have written about shock advertisement. Then we have written about emotional advertisement. Then we have written humorous advertisement. And then I have discussed the three missing points, gap points, and that gap points help us to write a justification. Therefore, the present study aims to compare the effectiveness because nobody has compared. The people have compared humorous advertisement and published the paper. People have compared emotional advertisement, they published the paper. People have compared, the fear, the shock approach, and then published the paper. Or fear approach, shock approach, and publish the paper. But nobody has compared that the three, which of the three is effective in the emerging market like India, which is very, very, important point to consider here. Therefore, if you see the last paragraph of the introduction, the aim of the research is to compare and examine the effectiveness of emotional shock advertisement. So I'm mentioning why, so that the reader is aware that what I'm trying to do. The second and the last three objectives are very, very mentioned. So having discussed the examples with the tips, the last point is as far as introduction is concerned, is is for an example, this is a topic which it is a working paper and it is under review of some journal, one journal which I have sent. The comparative study of effect of music with or without fragrance on consumer purchase behavior. So how I have written introduction? I have broken down into role of fragrance and music on purchase behavior, Indian scenario, and then I have given the justification that why it is important. Many malls with a brand store opening, why emerging market, this study is very important. Because India is becoming a destination for many brands, many global brands. Therefore, this is very, very important. Therefore, the introduction which I learned that you have to convince the importance of your work. This is just a summary. Describe the problem. Are there any existing solution? So that you can translate into a research question. Then, what are the main limitations of your earlier studies? That is very, very important. Because they say, so what? Everybody has studied, but what are their limitations? If you can give a brief, not elaborate, but brief. And then introduce the scientific theory here, if you can, nothing like it, in a very small manner so that the reviewer or the assistant editor who is reviewing your paper or the reviewer of your paper or the reader of your paper will understand that this theory we are going to discuss later to explain what it is, right? Then the editor hate references irrelevant to the work or inappropriate judgment on your own achievement. You should not drumbeat about yourself in the research. You cannot say that there is no research work done. For an example, if you are writing a research paper on impact of CEO speech on corporate identity, there is no research work. But you cannot write, there is no research work data available on the impact of corporate research on the data of CEO's speech on the corporate identity. You cannot write like that. You never know, somebody might have written. So you have to may say that there is a paucity of research in this area. That's all. That makes sense. I also learned the hard way. I used to write. Once I written, so I got bombarded with the nasty comments of the reviewer. This is what I learned. Never use more word than necessary. Add any theories which are going to use, bring it in the flow, and always add one last sentence in the introduction that what is the next section you are going to follow. This is what I learned recently. So let me give quote, excuse me, from the chief editor, Dr. Justin, who is a friend of mine. He said the introduction should give originality in scope and should emphasize why it is important and should need to do a better job explaining the importance to your reader. And the framing of the research question should be based more deep and narrowly in what you want to do. It's very, very important. So if we have covered the introduction part, the how to write introduction, we gave some examples, then we discussed the tips, then we again discussed some examples, and again we analyzed it, and that's how the introduction part was written. Of course, we'll have question and answer sessions subsequently. Now we'll go to the next session. I mean, say how to write a paper of international standards. I hope, is it visible? Yeah. Excuse me. Again, I like to share in general what your paper should contain. The first 3 pages should create an interest and stake the air in the stake the problems. Conceptual framework should be narrative. Journal style to be followed strictly, and the reference style should be followed. This is what we learned. And New Orleans, what we learned, that the best result takes place very high in a good journal. We'll discuss that a little later. Rewrite the title if it is wrong, relook at the abstract, and the revision of the submission. Start with when you are submitting the revision. Another problem is that when I'm submitting the revision, the problem comes in that how should I write submission? Start with the summary of the correction first. Answer each query in red color and make table if possible. That is an important way to get the, because I we personally feel that research defined as a systematic and objective process of generating information. So it has to be in a systematic manner. There should be clarity. If the clarity is not there, the paper get rejected. And how we will explore now very quickly. Research is not a is not a cut and paste job. It's, as you know, that 35% of the thesis are plagiarized. Still, this is the Times of India report in 2018. Now, what we will, during the aim of the session is to demystify the publishing process and encourage some of you to go beyond publishing paper to review, book writing, book review, editor's role. This is, and I'm available if you need any help from my side. Writing for publications, questions to answer before you write are minimize rejection. This is a very, very important point I thought I'll share with you. The first is ask yourself, is it new? Like for an example, in coronavirus purchase behavior. So I was asking, what is so great about it? सभी लोग खरीदते हैं कोरोना वायरस में, अभी घर में बैठे हैं तो ऑनलाइन ही परचेज होगा ना, और क्या होगा? But you have to ask, you have to create something new. Is it hot? Yes. People are wondering. For an example, during the lockdown period, what will happen to the teachers' acceptance of online teaching? How comfortable they are. Is it easy to teach mathematics through online? So these are the area which of research which we have done, and we are waiting for the reviewer's response. Or have you provided a solution to some difficult problems? Are you ready to publish at this point? If the answer is yes, then you can. So what happens when the paper is sent? I will very quickly go through the same due to the paucity of time, because normally it is a half-day sessions or full-day sessions, but we'll try to cover up before 12:20. So this is what happens when the paper is sent. You get a confirmation of the, you get a confirmation of receipt. Then initial decision is taken by the editor and assistant editor. They see your paper and then they reject it. And if the paper comes to their standard, then they start sending for the review. And this is what happens. The quality check, all those points are happening. Then the editors and reviewers, because you have to understand that editor and reviewers invest time in your reading your newspaper and reading your research paper. They are not paid for reading. There is nobody is paid for reviewing your paper. They are investing because of out of their interest. So you have to consider that aspect very, very carefully. A publisher invests time also. They also invest time, and you are not supposed to create a garbage. I'm sorry, using this, it happens. So one of my students, who's doing PhD, she wrote a very lengthy paper. So the comment came in that you please cut short, remove the garbage, and send which is relevant to us. I did not go through the paper because I had a confidence that this person is doing a good job, but it didn't work out. So you have to, if you have lending your name, you have to yourself get involved in the writing of the research paper. Then the reports of no scientific interest were out of date. The data has been already carried out by so many people have tried. Duplication of work, incorrect, unacceptable conclusions, because your result says something and you're concluding something else. It is happening. Even in thesis, I saw a thesis where the null hypothesis is accepted and the thesis is submitted. You are here to prove the alternative hypothesis for the PhD thesis. If you are only proving all null hypotheses, how can you be given PhD, sir? Think about it. You have to prove alternative hypothesis. Okay, fine. One or two, alternative hypotheses can be rejected. But if all null hypotheses are accepted, So what is so great about writing thesis or research paper, right? Incorrect and salami papers, where salami papers means, where everything written too smart, too paragraphs, two paragraphs, and samples are, within not less than, is less than 100 or 122, less than 200, and then, it is data is analyzed and given. That is called salami paper, which is may not be acceptable by many, uh, journals. When you start writing, ask yourself the originality of your idea. Very, very important. Type of manuscript. Who is your audience? Very important point, sir. And choose the right journal. This is what I learned. And the author's guideline has to be followed, and the journal style has to be followed. Your paper should have readability, should have originality. Was it? Why was it written? What is so new about it? Credibility is very, very important. Whether your methodology is robust. As I was telling you earlier, there are reviewers who are expert in methodology. So you have to be very, very careful in, when you're writing methodology, you have to be very, very elaborate. And then whether it can be applied, or what is the scope of your research internationally. If you're writing a journal, if your paper in an international journal, then you have to be very, very careful about this aspect. And the grammar check. This is the area where I can share my experience. I get repeatedly, saying that your grammar is not correct. So you have to be very, very careful. And best way you can use Grammarly software, but sometimes, we write British English, and sometimes the journal is American English. So there is always a confusion between American English and British English. So let us quickly go through the paper, which you know very well. Research, your research paper could be research paper, viewpoint, technical paper, conceptual paper, case study. So you can write different types of research paper, based on your option. And once your paper written, then we decide. Normally, for an example, recently I wrote a paper on how Himalaya brand has gone to US. So the topic was how Indian brands are becoming global, dash, case of a Himalayan brand. So when I started looking for a journal, so the word mentioned case of Himalaya brand. Many journals, they said that, how come you can write case? You should write in case study journal. Now the paper style of mine was more of a primary research. Then, how can it fit into a case study journal? Then, I wrote to the British International Journal of Business Review, and I submitted the paper, which is a Willis Publications, and they accepted it. It is also B grade rated journal as per ABDC listing, and in Scorpio it is rated very high. And I was talking about direct comparative advertising, whether it worked for a leading brand, was rejected in business strategy because that journal doesn't deal with the marketing subject. So having discussed writing for publication, what happens when the paper is sent, this is what we covered, when to start writing, understanding types of paper. Then let us come to the another type of paper is maybe literature review, or journal review is another type of paper which you can write. And then some examples, I thought I'll give you live examples which I got in 2010 from Journal of Marketing Management, which says that you have not followed the author's guideline and your grammar, spelling, you please check. So, I followed the American style. Then I learned that the Journal of Marketing Management is UK based journal. So you have to list down the American UK journal. So you have to again do that. Please always do plagiarism check. I have checked myself. I said I must check even though I know I write English, but my English may not be good. So I again check the grammar. I check the pre-plagiarism while writing a paper. So there are free software available on Google. Turnitin is a paid one. So many universities doesn't have, many colleges don't have. So you can use the, the free software available on the website to check. This is very, very important. And the confusion, when you are talking about the journal, so it is always follow a British style of journal, British English, that is better. Follow the author's guideline and the sample size. Somebody asked, what should be the sample size in the previous second day session? The sample size normally should be 384 should be sufficient, or 20 per variable as per Hare et al. 2010. You have to justify why the sample size is just correct. So you have to justify Hare et al. Normally 384 is ideal for any research paper, minimum. But if it is less, then you have to justify why it is less. So you can say 20 multiplied by number of variables in the test. So you can just say that these are the variables we are testing. So this is the sample size. And then comes the hypothesis development theory. If you can link the theory, that is nothing like it. Length of the paper should be 7,500 or less than 6,000 is better. For example, I wrote a paper of 7,500. The British Food Journal said we are not accepting it because we accept papers only up to 6,000. So try to have the size of the paper 6,000. That is better. Now, how will you convert into publications? I'll just quickly 2 minutes. I'll try to wrap up. Do not plagiarize, because whatever you quote, suppose you are quoting a reference, either you change the word and then you reformulate the sentence and then add. And otherwise, what happens? It comes under plagiarism test. So it's better, not to plagiarize. Write your own words. And if you are writing if you are copying the research finding, put it in inverted commas, quote, and write the page number. Because literature review is not cut and paste of the research work done of the others authors, but it is your own word you should write. So this is the plagiarism test, and that selecting a journal will be talked to by the other authors. So let me close. So thank you very much for giving the opportunity. The last point is the submit to the right journal, submit to only one journal only, pay attention to journal requirement, pay attention to structure, check the English, and pay attention to ethical standards. Don't pay money for publishing your research paper. Otherwise, this is the session. I thank you very much, ma'am, for inviting me. And if any person wants to have any question answer, you can answer. We have still 5 minutes more.
Yes, sir. My colleague, Dr. Rajeshri Deshpande, madam, will take the questions. But before that, I also wanted to share some information with the participants. Now, friends, the purpose of conducting such programs and inviting such an erudite and experienced researcher is to ensure that you shed away with that chalta hai, the complacent attitude which one develops while interacting with the mediocre researcher. We all know that there are many obstacles in your journey towards research, but one has to surpass the performances vis-a-vis the others. And after all, survival of the fittest have always been the mantra since time, but survival of the most receptive is the new mantra. And therefore, I believe that such session will enable you to understand a subtle difference and different nuances in the area of research. And all the credit goes to Dr. Srivastav sir for helping us understand very minute details in a very simple manner. So thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and being part of this program.
Thank you.
Formally,
Sorry,
Dr.
excuse me.
Rajeshri madam will take over for the question answers in the questions in the chat box and the formal vote of thanks.
Yeah.
Dr. Rajeshri madam, over to you. Madam, you can unmute yourself. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, madam. You are.
Question. how much percentage of chapter should occupy a thesis? Means there is a need of segregation. What would be the chapter-wise segregation in a thesis?
The introduction part, normally, you should write 120 to 130 pages, because then, this is what I tell my student. Then I edit and make it about 75 to 80 pages introduction. The literature review should be around 150 to 160 pages. Then I edit to make it about 100 to 110 pages. Then methodology should be minimum 10 to 20, minimum 10, maximum 20 pages, because you have to explain in detail. And then comes results. Results, is 30 to maybe 70 pages you can write. And your guide may reduce it to 70%, or maybe 35 to 40 pages. Then the conclusion should be minimum 4 to 5 pages. Then the managerial implication should be 2 pages. Then limitation of study should be 2 pages. And then contribution of the research should be minimum 1 to 2 pages. This is general. I'm talking about the an abstract should be 1 to 2 pages, not more than that.
Okay, sir.
So total thesis should be around, if you see our thesis, it normally varies from 250 to 450 pages. I'm talking about from Sydney Management Institute we give. And our Viva, you can check with the university, or all of you from the university department. Our Viva doesn't take long, it doesn't take more than 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, Viva is over, because we produce quality research, and we submit thesis within two and a half years. Now the new rule has come, so it will take 3 years. Otherwise, we try to submit the thesis in 2.5 years.
Okay. Sir, there is another question. What 2 parts to be made in the results and discussion chapter?
Which one?
What 2 parts to be made in the results and discussion chapter?
What to post?
2 parts to be made in the result and discussion chapter.
Discussion chapter, is basically result is the descriptive one. You are doing descriptive reporting and hypothesis testing. This is the basically result consists of 2 parts. This is what I understand. This is what my students follow. Now the discussion part is you have developed the theoretical model. Now the theoretical model in the hypothesis or in the thesis which you have developed has to be discussed by incorporating the hypothesis and the findings. And this will come on the discussion part. This is point number 1. Point number 2, in discussion part, you have to also add the theory to explain the behavior pattern. How the consumer, why you are getting this data? See, reporting the data is not research. Analyzing the data is research. Interpretation of data is research. And that's where the role of discussion comes in. I hope I have answered the query raised by him.
Yes. What is the meaning of cogent laws in research? What is the meaning of cogent laws in research? I think it should be something different. The spelling.
I have not understood.
COGENT, cogent laws in research.
Current law?
No. COGENT.
Cognizance.
Cognizance.
I have not understood, ma'am.
On
unable
what
to answer, ma'am. I'm sorry, I can't answer because I have not understood the question. Sorry.
Yeah. And on what basis?
You can email to me. I can reply. No problem.
Okay. On what basis we should say 386 sample size is enough? Is there an authenticated source of reference?
Yes, 384. I told you earlier. 384 is the minimum size, and if you give Hare et al., Uma Sheklan's book, 2006, Casey Kotari's book, you write. Nobody will question. Only you have to write that number is 384, which is justifiable as per Uma Sheklan's book 2006, Hare et al. Book 2010, and then Casey Kotari's book, jo bhi hai, aap dal dijiye. So nobody will question, but you have to justify.
Okay. Sir, can you explain gap analysis?
Yeah, the gap analysis is basically, ma'am, is based on the literature review. It is like a nerve of a body. So if you do the gap analysis well, you have understood the problem. And that is only possible when you do the literature review. And each literature review, as I was talking to you earlier, that you make a table. I insist, before the students are enrolled in Sidna Management Institute, they are supposed to read 50 uh, papers, current papers of last 10 years. And then they are supposed to write the author's name, year, journal name, country where it is done, and then what variable they have studied. And according to you, what variable they have not studied. So that becomes the gap. So you list down the gaps, so we get an idea that where I stand in terms of research. Without this table is very, very difficult, because then you will be roaming around. Many people, students, they come, the registered students come to me from other universities or other colleges. They're groping dark because their topic is clear, but they don't know what to do. So unless you are yourself is clear, what are the gaps, the variables which you have identified, right? Through the literature review and on the area where you can do research, then only you know this is the way you can identify the gaps. This is the simple way I'm just trying to,
Yes, very true,
explain
sir.
the thing.
If research paper, yeah. Another question, if research paper is written only with the secondary data, how far it is preferred in publication?
It is preferred, you have to select, for an example, when you are writing a data which is already available, then you have to develop a model, and you have to use the econometrics model to explain the, the behavior pattern of the data. If you can do that, nothing like it. Or you review, say, so from 1995, or say from 2000 to 2020, the paper published on the, the brand placed in the film. I'm just giving marketing examples since I'm a marketing person. On the, the brand placed in the film, how it will impact. So you take down all that, from 2010 to 2020, all the papers, about 100 papers. You review the paper and make a comment, and then develop the areas where, you can, the person can do research by applying primary research. Give a guideline. And this type of research paper is very well appreciated in review journals, like the one we know which I mentioned. There are many review journals which are of high standard, and these review journals don't accept primary data publications. They only accept the review of the papers already published. And in social science, this is very, very important. So you have to go to the review journal paper and then you write your thesis, and it's very good, but it should be very good. You have to write a lot of theories in that. You have to bring in a lot of theories review paper to explain their behavior. For example, if somebody is buying online more, why they're buying on my mole if I am writing the review paper. So I have to bring a lot of theories to explain this behavior to the in the journal. Then only the acceptance rate will be high. Otherwise, it will be desk reject हो जाता है. अच्छे अच्छे जर्नल में तो 5% ही एक्सेप्ट होता है. बी ग्रेड जर्नल में 15% होता है, और सी ग्रेड जर्नल में 30% होता है, और डी ग्रेड जर्नल में से तो जो पेड होता है तो उसमें आप कुछ भी दे दीजिए हो जाता है. यू पे 1500 300 3000 रुपीस, एंड जैसे यूजीसी लिस्टेड है उसमें भी हो जाता है. So it all depends upon what is your objective,
Okay. And the last question, what is the ideal sample size of population one should take for research paper writing?
384 I told you earlier.
Yeah, the same. So almost all questions are over, sir. Now I have to formally thank. I'm very thankful to Dr. Srivastava sir for his such a wonderful and informative session. He explained from framing abstract, introduction, research paper, then review, how to go for other type of references. Everything he has covered in a nice manner and with his personal experience. So it is no doubt very helpful and inspiring for everyone. I really thank you, sir, for on behalf of all participants for such a good information you shared with us. I also thank Director ICSSR, Dr. Smita Shukla ma'am, and CMA Dr. Kinnari Thakkar ma'am, Head of Commerce Department, University of Mumbai, and Dr. Hiren sir for his technical support. And we will meet now in second session after at 2 o'clock, 2:30, sorry, at 2:30. Thank you.